Hello again and welcome back to another episode of Adding Game Sounds, where today we're going to be tackling the boss battle room. What we're going to do is look at the cutscene that plays when the player enters level 5, or the boss room, in the 2D game kit. And we're going to look at adding sounds to that cutscene that play in sync with the animation that plays of the boss coming out. Before we jump into this lesson though, I kind of want to quickly give you a little tiny mini update about what I'm doing with this series, and then later in a few days or so I'm going to try and put out a video updating you on my channel as a whole. But in terms of this series, I just wanted to quickly say that I'm planning on restarting it, kind of. We've done a lot with the 2D game kit and there's tons more we could do. However, I think this series has been sort of on and off for a while now and it's had really great reception, but I think it's time I kind of packed it away and looked at moving on to another method in which I can show you all this stuff for using FMOD to implement audio into Unity. What I'm planning on doing is adding a few more sounds to this game, so a few more episodes, mostly focusing on this boss battle room, and then we're going to restart it with a new game. I'm going to try and find a new game for us to download on Unity, and then we're going to use the latest version of FMOD as well, because there's been some API changes. Like I said, more information on the series restart in an update video on this channel in a few days, but for now, let me know in the comments if that interests you or if that kind of worries you a bit. But anyway, with updates out of the way, let's look at what we're doing today. So like I said, what we're going to do is add some sounds to a cutscene, basically. What I'm going to do quickly is play you that cutscene so we all know what we're working with. So this is level 5. This is like the final level of the 2D game kit. As we've seen before, it's a pretty short game. You just basically go around the levels, you collect 3 keys, which I don't have because I've just skipped to this level, and you enter this room. Then what happens is if you walk to the right, you trigger this. So this is the cutscene. Obviously I haven't added any sound to it, but the camera pans, the door should be opening, but it's not for some reason. Oh my god. Okay, so it turned out that Unity crashed on me, so that's why it wasn't working. Anyway, let's give that another go. So we trigger the cutscene, the camera pans, the door lifts up, we get some smoke, screen goes a bit reddy, and then the boss lights its eye up and takes 1 footstep, second, then a third comes out, then a big shield appears around it. So all of that we're going to be adding, we're going to be adding some sound to. So yeah, let's have a look at how we're going to do that. The first thing you'll need to do is make sure you're obviously in the right scene. So in the assets folder, go to the 2D game kit, scenes, and it's scene 5 you want to be in. So like I said, this is a new scene we haven't yet looked at. Now in order to add some sound to this cutscene, we need to understand how the cutscene works, essentially. The first thing we need to do is work out how it's triggered. Now I've done a bit of poking around in this scene and thankfully it's quite simple. It's triggered via a trigger area, essentially, which we've looked at many times before. So if you go to the cutscene trigger game object and click on that, in the scene tab it will take you to the area where the cutscene will be triggered, basically. This game object has a 2D circle collider on it, which you can see is marked is trigger. So basically, once the player enters this circle here, our cutscene is going to trigger. Cool, so that's easy to know. We know that we can use this to basically cue our sounds as well. Now if we scroll down this game object, we've got a custom script called director trigger, and there's a few things that we can see on it that gives away that this is kind of triggering some actions to happen in order to create that cutscene. So we can see that triggering game object is marked with the Ellen prefab, so that gives us an idea what this trigger is looking for. Ellen, essentially the player. We've also got basically, well, Unity events, which we've looked at before in a previous episode, which if you haven't seen and you're not familiar with, I'll put a little link in the top right corner of this video. But to sum up, Unity events, what you can do basically is fill them up with a load of functions, and then once that Unity event is triggered, all of those functions, no matter where they are in your game, they could be on any game object, any script, those functions will trigger, okay? So using this Unity event, it looks like that once the player enters this area, everything on here is going to trigger. Now, if we take a look inside the Unity event, we've got a game object called cameras, which makes sense, right? We want to tell the camera when and how to move. So once the player enters that area, it looks like there's going to be some work with the cameras, which we'll look at in a second. Looks like there's also a function called release control being triggered from the player input script on Ellen. Again, that makes sense. We don't want the player to be running around whilst this cutscene goes on, so we want to remove control, basically prevent them from walking. Then finally, there is a script called background music player, and it's being muted essentially. So that's obviously from, when this game was made. It was originally using the Unity audio engine, so little things like that is muting the music that was playing before. I think what's supposed to happen is that the normal sort of background music mutes or fades out, and then some more dramatic boss battle music fades in. So maybe we can look at that in a future episode. Like I said, no guarantees yet. I'm trying to plan what I want to do for those last few episodes of this series. But that might be worth doing. So yeah, I'll write that down. You never know. Yeah, so those are the things that happen when we enter that area. Now, what I want to quickly take a look at is the cameras object that was highlighted when we clicked on this area here, the first game object that's having a function triggered. So there's a script called playable director and a function called play is being triggered. So if we click on cameras, we can see we've got this script here, playable director. And as you can see, there is a lot of information here. Now, we don't really need to understand what all of these individual things do. What we need to understand is that this component is basically triggering these things to happen one after the other in a sort of timeline. Now in Unity there's a feature called timelines, and what you can do is use them to trigger loads of things to happen at once, well, one after the other rather. So you can have a camera move followed by the player move followed by object spawning, etc. And we can actually see that one of these timelines is in use on this component here. So we click on that, then click on the timeline component, or double click on it I should say. We open it up in a new window called timeline, and we can see all of these things happening one after the other on this timeline. And this is what we're going to use to basically, as a reference essentially, to tell us how we're going to implement our audio via FMOD. Now what's cool about timelines is you can actually preview them. I think I've just got to remember how to do it. Do we double click on it? And if I go back to cameras, oh there we go, it's appeared. Right, so let me quickly move my game tab around a bit. I'm going to drag the little cursor on the timeline. Let's make sure you guys can see this, and we'll just quickly preview it. Okay, there we go. So if I hit play on the timeline window, you can see it's playing the timeline, the cutscene we've created, by triggering all these things to happen. So you can add in sort of events or fields, and you can tell things in Unity to happen. You can, predetermine a camera route for the camera to take. You can trigger audio, which is obviously something we're interested in. You can spawn objects, which is what happened there. It spawned that gunner and then triggered, that's the name of the enemy, by the way. That big boss is called a gunner. And then it also triggered an animation of that gunner coming down. If we quickly take a look a bit closer in the timeline, you can also see at what points those things are happening, right? So it starts with the camera, then you've got the door animation happening, the gunner's being spawned right at the end. So there's an animation basically with just some sprites. Then once those sprites are finished, those sprites are removed, and then the actual game object that represents the gunner that the player's going to fight is spawned, if that makes sense. And then they've just timed it perfectly. You can kind of see the transition there. So that it's kind of, this seamless thing where you've gone from this animation to then having the game object there, as opposed to just popping into existence. But yeah, long story short, you can add stuff to this timeline and create little mini cutscenes. And what they've done is they've used a few different audio files, and by triggering them at certain intervals, I guess you could say, or at certain points in this timeline, they're creating the cutscene audio. So what we're going to do in FMOD is we're going to create a 2D event. We're going to find these audio files, and we're basically going to replicate this portion of the timeline. So let's have a look at doing that now. Right, first things first, I'm going to go to my sound effects folder in my FMOD project. Let's go to enemies and let's create a new folder. We'll call this gunner again because that's the name of the boss, and I'm going to create a new 2D event, and I'm going to call this intro cut scene. Cool, okay, and then let's just quickly assign that to the master bank like that. Right, now let's take a look in Unity. Actually no, I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll create a couple of audio tracks and we'll put those 3 audio files in each track. I think that tidies things up a bit. So yeah, let's find those audio files. Now I've clicked on the first one that is triggered, and it's called Unity 2D Boss Intro. Now some of the names in my FMOD project, and likely yours, won't be identical to that in Unity, but if we type in boss intro, or maybe it's just boss, that might do it. Enemies gonna... No, what if I type in intro? There we go, so that's the one. So we can tell from the waveform that that is pretty identical. But what I'm going to quickly do, if I go into Unity, I'm going to go to Edit, Project Settings. I'm going to re-enable Unity's audio engine, then close that. Then if we come over to Audio Playable Asset, Gunner Intro, oh there we go, maybe it is the same name, and that I'm just looking at the wrong part of Unity. Okay, well there we go, Gunner Intro is the name of the audio file. Let's click on it. It should appear in the Project tab. If I, oh wait, you might not be able to see that now, 1 second. What if I do, there we go, okay, hopefully you can see that now. So Gunner Intro, that is the name of the audio file. And if I quickly play it, cool, and then if I jump into FMOD and play this one, perfect, that's the same one. So what we're going to do, Gunner Intro, oh yeah, it wasn't the same name, silly me. Let's quickly just stick it in audio track 1 for now. Next we're going to do the same thing with the other 3 tracks. So let's go to this second one that plays. So this one is called Door Opening. Let's quickly have a listen to that. Cool, that's nice and simple. So in FMOD, let's open up the audio bin, which I'm doing with Control and 3. And we'll type door opening. It's probably here, isn't it? Door opening. There we go. We'll just drag that in. Then finally, the last one that triggers is here. This one's called Gunner Shield on O2. Let's have a listen. Okay, then let's go to FMOD. Gunner Shield O2 on, I think it was called. There we go, and we'll stick that in. Cool, right, we've got our 3 sounds. Now what we want to do is basically line them up so they are triggered at the same time that they were triggered in that Unity timeline. So what I'm going to do, jump back into Unity. Now by default, if you're following along, you might notice that the timeline is actually in frames, or you might not notice that, but it is. We need to change that into seconds so that we can copy, you know, when, at what second they start on our FMOD event. So there's a settings option, or an options button, in the top right corner of the timeline window. If you click on that, you can change it from frames to seconds. There we go. Then what you want to do is put your cursor right where that first audio file plays. We can zoom in a bit just to make sure we've got it in the right spot, more or less anyway. There we go. And then if we look up here, 2:47 is what we're aiming for that first track. So in FMOD, we've got the time up here. So let's take the cursor to about 2. I've forgotten what it was now. 2:47 was it? Yeah, that's right. 2:47. Okay, that's close enough. So I'm going to put my first file there, and then we just repeat the process with the other 2 files. So I'm going to quickly do that now. Cool. Okay. Right. Mine is all matched up to the Unity one. Now what I want to quickly do is, if I can anyway, I'm going to quickly play you what this sounds like in Unity. Then what I'm going to do is play what it sounds like in FMOD, and I want you to notice if there's a difference between them. Okay, so that is the whole cutscene, or all the audio of the cutscene. Now let's have a listen to how it sounds in FMOD. Okay, now, you may have noticed it sounds slightly different. First of all, that last bit sounds way out of time. There's a big massive gap between these 2 files, which when we heard it in Unity, not only could we not hear that gap, but we can't even see it as well. They should sort of overlap. Right as this first one begins to finish, that last one should play. And also the levels are just a bit of a mess, but that's not what we're worried about for now. The reason why they don't kind of fit together nicely is because what they've actually done to make these audio files fit that cutscene is they've adjusted the pitch of it, or pretty much stretched out the waveform to make the pitch drop and lengthen the actual audio file. So if we click on this first one, for example, let's have a look where it says about the pitch. So you might be able to see it at the end of the name, actually, 0.4 multiplied. But if we look at speed multiplier, that's basically the same thing as lowering the pitch. They're multiplying it, or the speed of it, the play rate, by 0.3, so that's lowering the pitch and stretching out the waveform. So we want to recreate that in FMOD. Now unfortunately, and I might be wrong here, but I can't see any way in FMOD to adjust the pitch or the length of our audio tracks in the same way with a simple multiplier that ranges from 0 to 1 to 2, etc. We do have the pitch down here option, which as far as I can tell, which you by the way, get up when you click on an audio file. As far as I can tell, is done in semitones and semitones only. There might be a way to change it to, you know, just a simple multiplier. But as far as I'm aware, there isn't. So what I'm going to do is we're going to use this and it will create the same effect. We're just going to have to experiment a bit to find the right timings. Now with this door opening one, what I'm going to first do before I lower the pitch is stretch out the audio track or the region. This way we can see how far the audio file is going to stretch to. So I want to lower the pitch and we want to aim for about 0.4, multiplier of 0.4. Obviously that's going to be more than double. If we were to multiply it by 0.5, the length of the track would double. So 0.4 is going to extend a bit further than double. So if I quickly copy and paste this track, that's obviously double because there's two of them. So we want to aim for about there when we want to stretch the audio file out to where my cursor is now, just past 9 seconds. So to delete that second one, let's drag the audio track past the cursor, and then with the pitch, let's lower the pitch until we see that sort of region there that I'm moving now in the middle, or the wave file. Let's drag it past the cursor a bit, about there, and roughly that should do it. And then what I'll do is just add a little fade out as well, which is optional. Yeah, and again, basically want to recreate that for the other two files. So this is kind of intro one. Let's go back to Unity. If we click on that, that has a speed multiplier of 0.86. So we don't want to stretch that out too far, but we know we kind of want to stretch it out far enough to match this first one, or at the very least, sorry, this last one, at the very least overlap the two. So again, let's stretch out the region and let's lower the pitch and watch this waveform, and we want to watch till it kind of crosses over where this one starts. In fact, I'll put my cursor there so we can see it a bit better. So about there roughly we want to do it to. And finally, go back to Unity, let's click on that last audio file. That's a speed multiplier of 0.6 or nearly 0.7. So again, if I quickly Command C, Command V, oh whoops, to copy and paste it, that's about double, which is what it would be if it was 0.5, so we're going to go a bit less this time. I'm going to put my cursor about there, delete that second one, drag the track out, then we want to lower the pitch until the waveform kind of crosses over the cursor. Again, I'll just add a little one of those. There we go. Cool, right, and that's pretty much it. What I'm also going to do is lower, I think, the door volume a little bit. Might change that later, I don't know. But more, that should pretty much fit that cutscene. If it doesn't, I can always jump back in here, adjust the pitch and stuff, and definitely adjust the levels. So I'm going to hit F7 on my keyboard to build my new banks. Then let's jump back into Unity. Now we want to look at how we're going to trigger that event. What I'm actually going to do before I do that, go back to Edit, Project Settings, and re-disable Unity's audio engine because we don't need that anymore. I'm also going to right-click on the timeline window and close that tab because we don't need that anymore. Okay, so as we looked at in the beginning of this video, the way this cutscene is being triggered is with a trigger area with that circle. So let's go back to the cutscene trigger game object, and we're going to use the director trigger script, and more specifically, we're going to use the Unity event within it to trigger our audio. Again, in the previous video, we looked at these and we actually created a script where we can trigger FMOD events using Unity events. That script, let's see if I can remember what it was called. I think it was just something simple like trigger audio. There it is, trigger audio. So let's add that on, quickly find our event. Let's go sound effects, enemies, gunner, intro cutscene. There we go. We don't want it to play on awake or play on destroy. We want to play it when the player enters that trigger area. How do we do that? Well, we go back to the Unity event. So on director play is, we can tell by context, that's pretty much going to trigger when the cutscene plays, and on director finish is going to trigger when the cutscene's finished. So obviously we want on director play. So let's click on this little plus button at the bottom and add to this list of functions that are going to be triggered via this Unity event. So the game object that we're interested in is this one because it has our script on it. So in the hierarchy tab, let's drag cutscene trigger over to the game object field. Then let's search for our function. So we know it's in the trigger audio script, and it's called play one shot. Again, if you've seen that episode, you'll remember us creating that function. And if I haven't said it already, by the way, I will have a link in the description where you can just copy and paste this script we're using it. Okay, so let's click play one shot, and I think with that, we're good to go. If I'm wrong, we'll soon find out. So let's play our scene. Okay, here we go. So let's walk over. Let's find that trigger area. Oh, I don't believe it's happened again. Oh, what an anticlimax. Oh, okay. Oh, sugar. Okay, give me a second whilst I quickly reboot Unity and give that one more go. Right, fingers crossed. Okay, not bad actually, not bad at all. I think it was a touch out of time. Maybe those footsteps could have been tighter. Maybe that door came in a little bit too soon, but like I said, that was kind of expected. So what I can do now is go back into FMOD and adjust where these tracks start, adjust maybe the pitch a bit and stretch them out a bit more or a bit less to get them to fit. But other than timings, we're pretty much done. So yeah, like I said, that was a nice simple way of adding some audio to a cutscene. So yeah, that was that. Nice little simple one for you today. Like I said, I'll be trying to get an update video up soon in regards to the whole channel really, but also this series, so you know what's happening with it. As you know, I have courses on my website. If you're interested in learning about how to implement FMOD audio into Unity from start to finish and learning about all the different tools that FMODs provide, then go to my website, sign up to the newsletter where you can actually get a free lesson for that course and check it out if you're interested. Links to all of that will be in the description. And yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that stuff, blah, 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 blah. Follow, like, subscribe. Love you lots. As always, if you have any comments about this video, like I said, the updates, anything about the channel, anything you want to see from me, feedback, basically, is what I'm trying to say, please throw them down in the comments as well. That'd be really helpful. And apologies, by the way, if you've commented recently and haven't got back to you. I've been struggling to get to them, but my plan is to kind of put a bit more life and build some momentum back into this YouTube channel. So, as always, I've been Henry Scott. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.